an intro talk today? Or am I supposed to? I'm very confused.
I think last time you did, I mean, I will do some introductions as well, but last time you did like some basic stuff, I think logistical things.
Yeah, you do that today and like just walk through the key card setup?
Yeah, that would be nice, especially the key card setup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, I'll do that. All of those flash.
Charles, do you work in the city or?
I literally work a block over.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where at?
NGP.
Okay. I don't.
So they're basically a CRM. You know,
Yeah.
CRM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're kind of like Salesforce, but we do CRM for the political side.
Oh, okay.
And I work on the every action side, which works with nonprofits.
Okay. Do you guys work with schools at all?
I'm sorry.
Like schools, colleges, high schools at all, or no? It's all political and nonprofit.
Mainly political and nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we normally sell to. Yeah.
Okay. So, because the company that I work for, Full Measure Education, we work with a lot of schools. They're our clients, and so we have to integrate with a bunch of CRMs,
Okay.
including Salesforce. But Slate.
We do work with higher education. I know
Okay.
that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know who any of your clients in higher education are?
I believe Hopkins is one. Or
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hopkins, we integrate with them a whole bunch.
Okay.
How you doing?
Hi,
I'm Sam.
Alicia.
Nice to meet you.
I'm
So you can
like,
help
you're
us
not
out?
I'm just
Yeah.
going to pay attention from right here.
Yeah, good. Sounds good. So do you work at this location then, or?
Sometimes I work at this location. I swapped out a switch
Okay.
laid in there.
Yep.
Server, data center.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. This should be fun.
Good, good. That's exciting. Yes, we're going to briefly mention lands and WANs and stuff. You can tell us all about it when we get
Oh, yeah, sure. I've been doing that for 17 years.
there. Yeah. Nice. Has it all been private stuff, or you work for the government? Or?
So,
How you doing,
Hi,
man?
what's up?
I'm Sam.
I'm Josh. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And welcome. Thank you.
I've worked in nearly every industry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So I worked for top law firms.
Okay.
I worked for the federal government,
okay.
manufacturing,
Okay.
construction engineering, military,
All right. What branch?
Army.
Okay. Coast Guard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've worked in hospital.
Okay. So you do a little bit of
I've literally done
all IT stuff in all those different industries. Or,
in
Everybody needs it.
every place you
Yeah,
need it. So
that's right.
it's basically a bunch of swapping out servers or managing a data center or IT project management at the investment house, which is where I worked last.
Okay.
But here I get to just fix printers. It's great.
Which break all the time. How we've had printers forever and they never work.
So printers are a fickle thing.
Why is that? Like I gave up on them 10 years
Printers are
ago.
not designed for what we do to them.
Okay.
Printers were designed for IT to make money.
Okay.
Okay, so I can sell you a printer that costs $2.
Uh-huh.
That printer will be state of the art. You know where I get you? Toner.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. It's very expensive.
Because
And you have to
want
replace it all the
use
time.
the printer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're gonna buy my $2,000 toner for
Yeah.
a $2 printer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was definitely a revenue building measure.
Okay.
Kind of like, speedy cameras.
Sure. Yeah, those are the worst. But
But yeah, a lot of revenue goes out the door with IT because it's overhead.
Uh-huh.
But that's where you can make some money.
I see.
Seems to me that here a lot of the problems are different softwares trying to talk to each other and different operating systems. Like if you could take out paper cut, that would solve a lot of problems, right?
But we're not in an enterprise environment, so you need a barrier. You need something that's going to do your accounting for you, which is what PaperCut does. And there are other things that do it easily, but I don't make those decisions.
Yes.
You might recommend something else. Is
For
what,
me, I'd bring in copy copiers, and we would use a badge.
Right. The badge is coming, right? Isn't it?
So I've heard.
2 months away, like 2 months ago.
So I've heard.
Yeah.
Again, I don't make these decisions. I used to make those kinds of decisions. But that's why I like my job now.
Right.
Because when you're the person who makes those decisions, people hate you.
oh yeah.
PaperCut sucks!
It
It has a 99% uptime. Like, I'm sorry.
But that 1%.
That 1% is what does you in. And
Yeah.
they're like, I hate everything about WeWork.
That's right. Yeah, everything.
Really,
Yeah.
everything? The free water sucks. Because I can't print. People are angry. They're ridiculous. How have we been?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
You know who this guy is?
No.
That makes me sound important. I'm not.
Yeah.
I just used to be here. I used to work at WeWork
Okay.
at this location.
Okay. Nice. Yeah.
That's what you're doing?
Do
That's what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not going to say that you were the community manager.
Oh, well, yeah, I used to manage this WeWork location.
Okay. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. What are you doing now?
Nothing.
Okay,
I've
that's
been
a good life.
A couple of weeks in Europe, and then
Nice.
like some family time. My family's from New Zealand, but
Okay.
we've been up in Europe. And then the last week, random stuff. I did a triathlon. I'm on day 4 of a 5-day fast.
Okay. How's that
trying to
going?
Jam at everything that you can do when you're not working.
At once. Yeah.
You starving again?
Yeah, pretty hungry.
So I've done a few fasts of my own. 5 days is the longest that I've ever done it. Day 3 was the worst for me. Day 5, it's not so much pain as just like you need to eat something really bad. Yeah. And where are you right? Like, is your head okay? Like, you have headaches right now, or are you?
I'm okay. I'm
Okay.
a little lightheaded.
Yeah.
Get up. And
Okay.
things like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do any strenuous exercise.
Yeah.
I bike down here and that was fine.
Yeah.
But,
It's hot outside too, man.
That's
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
Are you doing just water or?
yeah, I have eaten a couple of things, so I've been having. Have you had a bulletproof coffee?
I love bulletproof
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah, it's a great day. So I've been having since day 3. I've been having one of those in the morning,
Okay.
and then half an avocado.
Okay.
I honestly haven't read much about it, but I was just curious, and I've heard some people talk about the longevity and health span and stuff, and they reckon that fasting is one of the interesting things for longevity. So I just thought it would be
Yeah, it's interesting. Like they believe that they've cured diabetes in some mice by having them fast for 14 days,
Yeah.
which is pretty.
Also, people who fast before chemo don't get sick after.
Oh, really?
So the tremors that you get, the vomiting that happens, the erratic bowel doesn't take place if you fast 48 hours before you get your
Oh.
chemo.
That's interesting.
And it tends to be less rounds of chemo when you do that.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully I never have to use that
watched the
advice.
fasting thing on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So the other way that you can lengthen your life, one, you get your telomeres measured. Telomeres are the markers for how long your life is going to be. People who live in Arctic climates have longer telomeres than we do. People who live in tropical climates have longer telomeres than we do. We live where there's too many seasons. The longer your telomeres are, the longer your life. Being cold all the time causes your body to constantly shiver. And while you're trying to get warm, you're burning calories, although you may maintain a layer of subcutaneous fat just to keep you warm. But apparently it lengthens your telomeres. People who live in tropical climates and they swim all the time are in cold water.
Yeah.
That cold water helps to lengthen your telomeres. Look at that.
I'm interested in cold
Freeze.
water. I take cold showers.
Yeah, so cold showers, ice baths. So it's the same thing that the guy who does bulletproof, like almost had. He talks about that. He talks about doing vibration machines. Like he has one that you can buy. I almost bought it, but Planet Fitness actually has a whole room
All
that
right.
you can go into and use. And kind of pushing yourself to be keto, right?
Yeah.
So I read a lot of his books. But yeah, so he talks about the ice baths. I like in the shower, even with your hair. Washing your hair in warm water, which opens up the cuticle. You want to give yourself a cold shock after to close the cuticle. It was a little bit much getting used to,
Yeah.
but now I do like 5-minute cold showers.
Yeah.
And my body instantly gets warm. Like I heat up like a stove.
It's amazing when you
It is. You adjust.
Yeah.
So, polar bears look fat, but that layer of subcutaneous fat keeps them warm. Otherwise, they get terribly fat.
Yeah.
But that's why they live so long.
What was your reason for doing the fast?
I'm Christian. It was just
Lent?
I was just a way. I do it every once in a while. It's just a way of reconnecting. It's just like
Nice.
yeah. It's basically as you get hungry, you think about God and you pray and yeah. That's
All right.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
I was a nun for 6 months.
Oh really?
I was, actually. That was a long time ago.
Before all the other things, or somewhere in between there?
Way before all of the other things.
Okay.
I was 23.
Okay.
I thought that I'd heard the call.
Uh
Apparently I didn't.
huh.
The Reverend Mother was like, I think that you do great work out in the world. I'm like, what are you saying? She's like, I think you have too much personality to be a bride of Christ. I was like, no, I'm committed to this. She was like, no, I believe you. But so I had to choose some other things.
Yeah. I get
At
it.
that point. Yeah, that was a fun time.
Was it?
No,
I mean,
but like so.
maybe. I mean, I don't know.
I was particularly devout. I went to Catholic school.
Yeah.
I, did all my sacraments and all of that. My heart was definitely in the right place. She was like, but this is not a life for someone with a light as bright as mine. That's a fact. is what she said. And I was like,
That's
"Alright,
interesting.
That's really nice. I'm depressed now."
Yeah.
Did you make a life decision like that? Like, I made
Sure.
like that was a life choice.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I didn't know what direction to go
Mhm.
with that. So
So you win every one.
I've done quite a lot. And then, you know, one of my I guess greatest achievements is that I was a foster mom. I fostered 15 teenagers and 2 children under 5.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes up for all of the comments.
That's crazy.
It was like the best thing I've ever done with my life. But then I got what she meant.
Yeah.
I got what she meant at that point. So yeah.
Man. Yeah, I can't manage my 2 nephews for 5 minutes, let alone that many kids. That's crazy.
So 4 at a time.
Uh-huh.
I'm not Julie Andrews or anything.
Yeah.
But it was, you'd be amazed at the impact they have on your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you changed them for sure, but they changed you in a way that you hadn't ever expected. Plus, I'm the person that kids gravitate towards. Sharon Bickmore got her daughter's in, and you can tell she's like fried. She's like frazzled. And I was like, talk to him. So I talked to him. All of a sudden, they're sitting there like this. And Sharon's like, I don't know how you did that. I was like, imagine.
Sharon wouldn't like that. She would think that she would get those straight now.
You would think. She looked fried.
Yeah.
She was like, they start school tomorrow. Oh my God. But they're active. They're extremely active.
Yeah.
But I was like, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're like 5.
Mm-hmm.
If they show out, so I gave her some parenting tips too, because 17 kids.
Yeah.
I said I had little ones who fell out in the store and had a tantrum, and I'm looking at them. And then I lay down on the floor next to them, and then I start kicking and screaming because kids understand embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and they look over and they tap me, and they're like, "Mommy, get up. What are you doing? You are embarrassing me."
At what age?
At 5.
Wow.
Yeah. So they know.
Oh, yeah.
But you gotta be willing to be crazy with them. And you gotta be willing to extend your crazy, because you don't ever have to lay your hand on a kid, you just gotta be creative.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, if they fall out, leave them. What are they gonna do? They can't drive home. So they're having a tantrum and you've left, they no longer have an audience. So they'll get out. She's like, how do you know these things? You should write a book. Well, people don't want to hear about somebody who doesn't have kids. Giving them parenting advice. Although I am extremely creative.
It sounds like it. Absolutely.
You gotta be. You
Yeah.
gotta become creative with the Leeward side.
Yeah. For sure. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We're missing a couple of people. I think Aaron is going to come back in and give us an introduction, get you guys set up with WeWork cards, which 2 of 3 of you are probably already set up. I assume you still have some access to the building. Oh, they took it away from me. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you don't have a card yet, I assume. Yes. So I hope she's going to come in and explain to us how to do that, and we'll get you on the app, which I still haven't been able to do successfully either, but which gets you a little bit more access to some of the services, so you can like purchase things at the little snack bar that's out there and that type of thing. And then we'll start with, while we're waiting for Aaron, has everybody signed into their Learn.co account and created a GitHub account and associated it with your Learn.co account? And then created Slack and associated that with Learn.co account, and it's supposed to be in that order, from what I understand.
I'm not sure.
Does any of that sound familiar, Charles, or is that all?
It sounds familiar. I just don't think I did it. I think I have to
Okay.
learn.io. I do have a GitHub account, but it's not linked to that.
Okay, so if you go to Learn.co and then log in, once you get there, you should have like a symbol for yourself.
Yep.
And you can manage account. and then click on Connected Apps. And you want to connect your GitHub account, which is will look a little different mine because I've already done it.
So you just sign in GitHub.
You can try that. Yeah, I think you have to sign in first, but maybe not.
You do.
Yeah. Hey, I just started getting them on GitHub and Slack, but
Okay.
Hey, Aaron.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. No. I don't have my
Okay.
presentation. I had a student issue.
Okay, no worries. Do you want to jump off of this thing? Like that?
Are you just hooked up?
I was just on Solstice.
Oh, okay.
Do you want?
We had a student. It's like,
Mhm.
it's like, I don't want to start today because I'm not ahead of the curve. I'm like, we're going to part time with
Yeah, it's really hard to figure
It's like, I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, we can defer.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like, your confidence is going to be shot.
yep. Yeah, because there's so many basics to just get started.
Yeah, I'm like, oh. I was like, just want to let you know, like, you're actually
That is
but
correct. Very
It's
good.
not fine.
Yeah, well, everybody has to make their own decisions and learn their own ways.
yeah, I was like, we respect it. I was like, I just want to give you a heads up that
Yeah, I'm like,
where's the rest of the class? I wonder if they're downstairs.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe they're stuck.
You're not only learn, you're only you work. This is
Alright, so it's unlimited repositories.
Do you have your, I don't know, did they already set up your
Trying
Slack
to set up
channels?
an organization.
So it looked like they were not there. I was just going to create a public one if they didn't exist, but
Okay.
when I looked at it earlier,
Sure. Here's my-
there's a DC private channel, which maybe that's the intention is to use that one. No, that's from way back.
Well,
There.
Hey,
you're on.
I am it. Choose.
Oh, maybe I'm looking in the wrong workspace.
I kind of want to, like, hold on, I'm going to go downstairs.
Yep,
Um,
might be people down there.
Yeah. And people are sometimes move it.
Yep.
You go through a power trip and like, oh, no, you're going to allow this.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know why there's not. So- Okay, but were we able to get connected with GitHub and Slack, maybe? Slack, you probably have to create an account if you don't have one already, Charles.
Alright, cool.
What's the workspace for Slack?
It's learn-co, I believe. Let me double check. Learn.co, it looks like. Learn-co. Learn-co. But when you go to do that, depending on how, like, I think the page you're on is probably wrong. Because I think, yeah. So I think what you really want to do is just sign in if you go back to the Slack page.
So I just went straight to
Yeah,
go
so
to
if you right
regular
the other tab there. So in the upper right, there's that sign in button.
Okay.
What does it say for me? What's my nickname?
That's great.
You must have used it before.
Enter
Okay,
name,
so-
please. Let's do it here.
Uh-oh.
Well, just
There should be.
I can change it.
Just
Okay.
search in the browser for like
That was hilarious.
sign in as Slack. Okay, just try learn-co then. I feel like went through this exercise last class and this is not the right way to go.
What does it go to sign up? Is there an option for
You need
sign
my
up?
actual address, Sam?
What's that?
You need my actual address for this
What happens if you go
enrollment agreement?
Don't have any idea, to be honest. I've never actually seen that paperwork before. Aaron, though.
Okay. Oh, it's just to accept the
Yeah,
payment.
maybe that's it. Maybe you have to create your own workspace, then you log in and I can invite you.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, I checked with him and
Did you forget the address of the building?
I thought Mike was
That's
Seem more legit these days.
See, this is stuff you had time to do. 'Cause
exactly.
You were, really my date of birth. You didn't even know how old I am? Very. I guess it doesn't require slashes. So you went to camp?
No, I was never going to though because I had a wedding in Philly for May of mine. So even before sending Jack, I was going to go. Did you go?
I did.
How was it? Awesome.
It was amazing. And like the very last night that I stayed up like all night singing at a piano in a field, I bumped into Miguel.
this you can just do whatever you want. I mean,
Found
That's why
him.
we don't want to try and find waffles.
Yeah,
And we ended up having like this really interesting chat.
very good.
It was great.
Just,
How's everybody else?
Hey,
So
how you
lovely.
doing? What were you saying?
We said a lot of things. I will show you the slide deck.
Alright.
okay, so now that you're this slide, so you're this. I thought you would sit down as a weaver hat.
All right. Welcome to Flatiron School. So I'm going to set your computer on the windowsill.
Just don't close it.
Yeah, I was like, it's open for a reason, so I'm not going to close it. Great. I'm Erin. I'm the senior program manager. I oversee mostly the daytime in-person program, the 15-week rigorous course, web development course. But I'm also kind of like a resource to you all because I'm the one that handles campus logistics. So if you have any questions, you can always find me on Slack. You can Slack me if you're having issues with your key cards or setting up key cards or anything like that. You can feel free to Slack me as well. But other than that, you have Sam, who's your instructor for all of like your curriculum questions, and he'll go through a presentation himself about him and his background and all the things that he knows. But that is Sam. He'll be your instructor for the next 10 weeks, right? 10 weeks, yeah. So we have a student code of conduct. Can everyone see the board well? Okay. And so this is the same student code of conduct that we give to our full-time students. And so we just have 4 kind of guiding principles that we expect from all of our students that are on campus, whether you're full-time students, part-time students, web development, or data science students, to create a welcoming and safe environment for all of our students. So the first principle is that we are considerate and respectful of everyone, fellow students, instructors, visitors to our campus. Is that generally as human beings, we expect for everyone to be considerate and respectful. We refrain from demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior and speech. And a lot of times we think about this as like externally, like you don't use demeaning speech to other people. But one thing that we found over time is that when people were learning code, they began to become very demeaning to themselves. Like, I'm so stupid. Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know how to do this. I'm never gonna learn how to do this. So I always remind people that don't use demeaning speech to yourself either. Then to create a positive impact on everything around them. Keeping with this theme of being positive, be positive to yourself, be positive to the people around you. As you'll learn code, it is very difficult and it's very frustrating. But if you keep this positive sense of mind that you're going to get through it, like this is frustrating right now, but I'll be able to overcome this, and this is for this greater good, you'll have a better experience in this program. The last thing is participate in an authentic and active way. One of the things at Flatiron School is that we embrace diversity. And so what other way can you celebrate diversity and embrace diversity if you can't bring your authentic selves? So make sure that you are bringing your authentic self and being active in that way. Actively participate, ask questions, don't feel shy. You've either invested time and or money to be in this course, so be greedy with your education and be as active as possible. Don't go without your questions being asked. That is what Sam is here for. That is what I am here for. I won't be able to help you with much coding. If you have questions about outside of coding, I might be able to help you with those. But that's what we're here for. This is just a reinforcement of our principles, the reasonable person principle. It's a rule in which we expect all of our students to abide by. This is an obligation to your fellow community members. We look at ourselves as a community. And so we expect that everyone will be reasonable. Everyone expects everyone else to be reasonable, and no one is special. If you keep as that guiding principle, I think that we will create and maintain a positive community and environment that is safe for everyone to learn coding. The last kind of note down here, don't be offended if someone suggests you are not being reasonable. While you might not have intended to hurt someone's feelings or offend someone, if someone brings it up to you, expect that that person is being reasonable, all right? And don't be offended. Just take it as feedback and change for the future. Here's a note about our curriculum and platform. Throughout this course, you'll go through a series of labs and lab work on our Learn.co platform. Our labs are living code. And once you get to code, you'll figure out that there are a lot of errors and bugs that pop up. Because our platform is living code, like our curriculum writers are constantly looking to update and make our curriculum better, you'll find bugs. It's your responsibility as students to let us know when those things happen, right? We want to make sure that there's a quality, that you are having a quality education here, and that the students behind you also have a quality education. So submitting those fixes and submitting those bugs are really helpful to not only yourself, but also to future students. There's more work than you can complete. Sam will probably give you like supplemental work and exercises to kind of push you a little bit further. Try everything, but don't think that you have to complete every little single thing. But try everything. It's worth it. And get as much work as done as you can. Don't just watch lectures or give up immediately. Struggle. You'll hear this theme over and over again. Coding is frustrating. That means that you will struggle through the coursework. But don't give up. You will get it. Takes some people a little bit longer than others. That's fine. It's just time. You'll get it. You won't get it. You may not get it. You might get it before everybody else. It's fine. That's why we're all human. We're very different and unique. And so not everybody will get everything at the same exact time. This sense of community that we build is just based on this teamwork. There will be times when you are working independently. There are times that you'll be working with another person. But as a community, we're here to embrace each other and help each other throughout the coursework. So there will be a lot of times where you can turn to your neighbor or turn to the person sitting next to you and say, hey, did you understand this? Because I didn't. And then there will be times when it's flipped and you have gotten something, but nobody else in the class has understood something. But as a community, we're here to make sure that everybody reaches the same end goal and same end point. Slack. How many of you have never used Slack before? Show of hands. It's okay if you haven't. Before I got this job, I never used Slack. I didn't even know what it was. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Slack, Slack is, and I'm going to show my age here, Slack is, the way that I think about it is like when I was growing up and AOL was like a thing, and you had instant messengers, you could send somebody an instant message, and I was only talking to one person, but then you can go and like find random people in chat rooms, right? So Slack is kind of like that. That's the way I see it, at least. So Slack is our primary way of communication here at Flatiron School, and a lot of different other places. A ton of other people and companies use Slack. It's our primary way of communication because it allows us to communicate with many different people at one time. For me, I find it helpful for myself because it allows me to refer back to conversations and remind me of like the tasks and the responsibilities that I need to do. Like, oh, I talked to this person about this one thing a week ago. What was it and what did I need to do? So it keeps a record of all of your conversations. So you can direct message people if you would like to only talk to one or a few people and you want to ask them a question. Or you can submit to a channel, which usually has some kind of subject matter. So so we have two channels here for you all. One is the DC White House Campus Management channel. That is, we usually use that channel to update students on anything that's going on. And then you have a class-specific channel. So that will be your channel. Did you set up yet?
No.
Okay. I can set it up. It's really easy. By the end of class, we can have you set up with your own class channel, and that'll be just for you and your fellow students in this class to communicate. Sam, your instructor, will also use that to communicate with things with you, maybe like remind you of certain things that you have to do, or I don't know, send funny gifts.
I put in there sometimes code snippets, all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff.
Or just for funny gifs or gifs, whatever there's a big debate on like how you say it. I say gif, but whatever. If you want to just send funny things to people. Josh, who's here, but now.
I wasn't expecting that.
I forgot. Josh is actually a part of WeWork, and now he's kind of still part of our WeWork family. But Eric is also now our community manager. I forgot to update the picture.
Oh, good.
But yeah, if you have any building issues, actually, you should probably just come talk to me or Slack me. The WeWork community. So Flatiron School is part of WeWork. WeWork acquired Flatiron School in October, November of last year. So we as WeWork employees and you as Flatiron students, we have very high expectations about how you all treat our community because we are a representation of WeWork. So general policy is that when you're walking through the hallways, if you can see, if you're walking down the hallways, number one is like a maze, but all of the offices have glass walls, which doesn't make for really great acoustics. So when you're walking down the hallways, please be respectful, making sure like you're keeping track of the volume that you're using because people are still working. So you just want to be mindful of that. We have some kitchen areas, and probably during your break, you'll be able to wander and find the kitchen areas. There's filtered water available. You can store stuff in the fridge if you like, but the fridge gets cleaned out every Friday at 4. There are reusable dishes, so we have mugs and reusable cups. that you are more than welcome to use. But just make sure that you're returning them to the kitchen area. And then we also have phone booths, which actually don't have phones in them. But they are for you, we usually use them so that you can take any kind of personal calls, so that you're not disrupting the other students on campus and you're not disrupting the offices around here. Any questions about like the kitchen area, phone booths, or anything like that? Great. You, in a second, will receive your WeWork key cards. Campus is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only rule that we give to people is that, yes, you can access the building 24 hours a day, but you can't sleep here. You may work here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you cannot sleep here. But sometimes people take naps in the phone booths. But those are like limited to like 30 minutes. So that's the only kind of sleeping we allow. Just reviewing like the noise policy. This is more specific to being on campus. So as you'll see, students, even during the full-time program, are here past 6 p.m. And so generally we don't play music out loud, and we don't like yell across the campus or anything like that. So this is just another reminder just to like be mindful of the volume that you're using while on campus. Just another reminder about the cleanliness policy, making sure that you're taking all your dirty dishes back to the kitchen. When you're leaving at night, just to do a inspection of your area around you, making sure that all of the trash is picked up and going into the trash can on your way out at night. Let's help out our cleaning crew. For those of you who haven't set up the Wi-Fi yet, you can set up to the WeWork network, and then the password, so secure guys, it's password with the @ symbol and 0. So if you want to take a moment to set up your Wi-Fi, you can do that. Also, just another note about laptops, as you notice, we require Macs. For the most part, that means that everybody has the same adapter. So it's helpful for you to label your adapter. If you leave it here one night, somebody will probably be gone the next day. Not because someone has stolen it, but because somebody's gotten it mixed up with their own. So just make sure that you are labeling your adapters so that you have it forever. Any questions before I move on? Or?
Yeah, related to adapters, you'll know this by the end of today anyway, but make sure you bring a charger to class, because 3 hours is a long time.
Yeah. Great. All right, we're going to set up key cards. And I'll Slack out this presentation. Nate, Jenna, did I say that correctly? I did? Great. Shakara, did I say that? Joshi.
Michelle, first.
Michelle?
Michelle.
His first name, okay.
Yep.
Charles, and you two have cards.
I guess, but I'll take the same.
Okay. You do though. Great. All right. So setting up WeWork key cards. These are the steps that you'll follow. So you're all already in the system, but you just need to register your cards. And you'll do that by downloading the WeWork app onto your phone. And then what you'll do is you'll access that email, and then you can just go ahead and reset your password. Then, of course, it'll ask you to create a new password. And then you'll just follow the instructions on screen to register your key card. we can spend a couple minutes while you try to do that.
It's like I'm not in the Charles not small.
You're killing me, Smiles.
I know, right? I bought the t-shirt yesterday, actually. I'm like, I got my up, sorry. So you can't go from that. But it speaks up like a shirt exists. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably the same.
Yeah.
What is it? Oh,
Is that what you created? That channel was created.
yeah, it's weird. Let's see. Sam, did you already set up that channel?
No, Josh was working on it, so that was it, right?
I'm in it too.
Yep.
Yeah. I
I
couldn't find it when I didn't see the video.
So it's DC-DB.
So
With a
weird.
hashtag.
Oh, in the beginning.
No?
Yeah, it's weird.
That's so weird.
Huh? But you all are in it.
Yeah, but
Sam, could you find it?
No, I couldn't find it either. I can try on
you want me to
Did
send
you want to make it private? Did somebody make it private?
On purpose.
It is locked.
Oh, it's
Got it.
private?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's probably what I can't have Charles do. So,
Anybody having trouble setting up going through these steps? I see people taking pictures of their IDs.
You said this was used using the email that we.
Mm-hmm. Is it rejecting it? Or is it?
It is.
Michelle, is it?
It's working?
No, it's not allowing me to reset my password code through the works.
Do you work in Birk?
Mm-mm.
No. Let's see. Try the second one.
what's that? This is it right now. But, yeah, I'm gonna talk to, I told them like division management courses. That was some years ago. So I got a PhD in management.
Yeah.
It's in 2013. Yeah, and so I taught after that, the UNC program leadership for undergraduate and grad school, stats courses, management courses, and that type of thing. So I was just going to
And how did you get
so I taught myself, I left, so I was working for the University of Maryland Department of Transportation. So I was driving the buses, the drunk buses, and taking kids from the University of
Take about 2 minutes.
and I did that full time between the end of undergrad and the beginning of grad school. And in the summer, they would just pay like so they walk the kids there, drive from the doors to the kids. So I said, hey, I can take some of these buses, you guys are doing amazing. Sales spreadsheets. I'm going to do that instead of watching movies. So I did, and it's been a journey ever since.
Okay.
I'm so fun.
Yeah, it's
I just started taking things apart.
yeah, that's the thing, right? Then the nice thing about code is that you can't break it, right? Like, you have to find new pieces.
Or, yeah,
It's all-
yeah, I've tried a few things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think everyone else is pretty good. I'm gonna look at Charles's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the company I'm working with, he had a $10,000 computer. I was like, sir.
Yeah.
It was a big thing, yeah.
So basically, it is what the stock market runs on. So, you know, you get like 4 video cards in there, you got like,
So no, it's basically
Super fast connections.
it's basically a server. Yeah.
All
For NASA.
So those of you who weren't here earlier, if you can log in to learn.co, which you might have done before, does everyone here already have a GitHub account? Okay, so if you don't have a GitHub account, then go to GitHub and create an account. It's pretty straightforward. And then once you do that, go to learn.co and log in, and I'll show you from there. Yeah, so it's just a simple sign up, give it an email address. Haven't really had this problem here, but in my workplace, people like to create GitHub accounts that are like full Measure Dash, which is the name of our company. Don't do that necessarily. The GitHub account you want to go with you forever, everywhere, so people can see your contributions and what you're doing. So just like whatever cool username you think you should have, or more professional, whatever you're into. Mine's Samuel Birk. It's super simple. And then once you have a GitHub account, if you log into LearnCo and you click on your profile, go to Manage Accounts, you'll see a page like this. You'll go to Connected Apps. There should be a button that says Add GitHub. You'll click and log in with GitHub. And then we'll go through the same process with Slack. So we'll create a Slack account, we'll get logged into Slack, and then you should be able to add your Slack account. Let's see if I can find the channel. That's so weird. I wonder if... So my email address in like LearnCo is associated to the old email address that they got rid of. I wonder if my that the channel was associated with my new email address and I'm not logged in that way.
I don't think they didn't give me admin access.
Okay.
Maria set it up that so there's admin
Yeah.
access.
I can Slack Maria.
Okay.
See and have her add you.
Yeah. So does everybody have a GitHub account at least at this point? If not, it's okay. I just am trying to. And then was everyone able to connect their GitHub account to LearnCo?
Yeah, no, it's actually saying can't find it associated.
So, yeah, so you have to sign in first using, you probably already set this up previously, received an email about it, invite email, I think. Everybody else?
Yeah.
On that ad. Yeah, so you probably received an email that will allow you to log in, not with GitHub, and then once you log in, probably can associate with that.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So in that Slack chat channel,
Okay, great.
it's saying to see the full history of creative member paid.
Oh yeah, that's just, they don't pay for this classes thing. It just means messages, after 10,000 messages get used on LearnCo, they don't show them anymore. So it just means We'll go over this,
Okay.
but basically, if you want to keep
Okay.
information, you have to do what's called pinning them.
Okay.
If you're familiar with Slack, and then that won't actually go away, it's pinned.
Okay.
That's all that really is.
Okay.
I sent Maria.
Okay. How many people got into the Slack channel? We're actually able to log into Slack and get there.
Is it this closest 1118?
That is very close. That is what the one was before. It should be 08.
2728.
That's today's date, yeah. Dash FE. Dash 0827. Yeah, so yours is John. Okay.
Oh, wait.
Did you find it?
Private.
It's private. Yeah, I think
I'm in it now.
you're in it.
Yeah, if
How
I
did you-
connected
Yeah.
my Learn Dash code,
Then it showed up.
Yeah.
I bet you that's exactly what it is because she was asking me today to connect my LearnCo and it's connected to the other email. Okay. So Charles, what that means probably for you is if you go back to LearnCo and you go to connected apps and then to Slack, now that you have an account, you should be able to connect your Slack account, and then then the channel should show up for you.
When I just press connect the account, this error comes up.
Can you try to open an incognito window?
Okay.
Just be file new incognito window, and then go back to LearnCo, log in again, try that process again. Good. It looks like it just has bad credentials. But...
Is everybody else able to get logged in? Slack connected. Okay, got LearnCo. All right, so now if you go, okay, click on GitHub first. So go ahead and click connect this account. And go back there. Yeah. And then connect account. Do you have a Slack account somewhere already? So you can create a new one. You just need to put in, it doesn't matter, your name. Like I say, it's actually say account. Create a new workspace. It did, I'll let you go, that's fine. Whatever. Just anything, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Skip it. Alright, so now you have an account, so now you go back to LearnCo. Okay, so this is the same. If you open up a new incognito window, LearnCo, yeah, log back in. Yeah. So it's a learn dash yeah. Sorry for having to ask. Do you create the GitHub account with the same email? And is that the same as the Birk one? Charles, the same thing. Did you create the GitHub and the Slack and the Birk all with the same email address?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But you're still not able to get to the Slack. Okay. All right. We might have to work through that with Aaron after class or during a break here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with just some basic introductions and that type of thing, and then we will have a little break. I'll show you guys where the snacks in the kitchen and the bathroom and all of that is, and then I'll come back while you guys are on break and see if I can figure out how to get the rest of you connected to Slack, because it is a pretty critical tool. So basic introductions, who I am. I did a little bit of the story already, but I'll repeat it. So I got into coding, let's see, 10 years ago now. 10, 11 years ago now. I self-taught. I was working for the University of Maryland with the bus company. I was driving the drunk bus. I was taking the kids from the dorms to the bars. And I really enjoyed doing that. And I had summer between undergrad and grad school where I was working for them full-time. Full-time drivers, though, there's not a lot to do when there's no kids to drive from the dorms to the bars. So you just sat on a couch and watched movies. I was a manager there for a little while. I saw a lot of inefficiencies in bringing it. So for buses, you take a tally. So at each stop, you say how many people got on and off of the bus. They write that down at the time on a piece of paper, and then at the end of the week, they were paying people 40 hours a week to just take the information from the piece of paper, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, create a graph, and that was their whole job. They were literally spending 40 hours a week doing that. So I said, hey, if you, instead of paying me to sit on this couch, you pay me to learn how to program, I'll put it on the screen so that instead of writing down on a piece of paper, they put it into a field that looks just like the piece of paper, and it'll auto-generate the graphs, and then you guys will be in a better place. So we did that. I built that and a couple of other tools while I was there over that summer. I took those skills with me to my PhD program at the University of Arizona, where I studied management. Did a whole bunch of experiments, did some cool stuff with like micro emotion detection using flash streaming to capture people with video, and built a whole bunch of surveys and different conditions for our experiments. And then I built some statistical software while I was there. Realized that I really enjoyed that. I liked it a lot better to press Command R and I can see a change happen, as opposed to waiting the 6 months to 2 years for an academic paper to make it into publication. So I said, screw this, and I went off into the world of programming. I started as part of my professional career just 4.5 years ago now, working for a contractor for the Naval Research Laboratory. Built a whole bunch of internal systems there. Realized that nothing gets done in government, and I left very quickly. And I've been working at a startup that does education technologies now for the last 3.5 years. We build communication tools that connect students to advisors. It's an opportunity for the advisor to send out personalized communications to students based on attributes that they know about the student. So, hey, I know that you are potentially eligible for a Pell Grant and you haven't applied for one yet, so I'm going to send out a communication to all 5,000 people at my school where that applies, saying don't forget to fill out your Pell Grant, and you can reply back to that, and an advisor is sitting on the other end of that line, ready to text you back and forth. We do a couple of other things in the mobile app, but that's the main point. So been doing that for a while now. It's been a lot of fun. I've gotten to build a whole bunch of systems there. We've done everything from massive integrations with a whole bunch of different CRMs, or what they call SISs, which is basically the same thing, to building our mobile apps, to building our web interfaces, to creating ops deployment things. So I've seen pretty much the whole world at this point, outside of hardware. I still don't touch that stuff, but that's where it is. So that's a little bit about me. I do want to get to know a little bit about you, so we're just going to go around quickly if we can. I just want to know your name, your current job, and why you decided to take this course, what you're trying to get out of it, so we have a little better idea. Do you want to?
My name is Shakara McGuire. I am the membership and events manager for a nonprofit that works in international relations. And I wanted to take this course so I could get a new job. That's pretty much it. I'm interested in front-end positions, so the programs that we'll be learning, as well as I'll kind of begin to react
Okay.
outside of the class, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Hi everybody, I'm Charles. I'm currently an account executive for a tech company called NGP/Reaction. So we do CRMs that are geared towards nonprofits and political parties as well. I'm just taking this class so that I can eventually become a developer/UX designer eventually.
Hey everyone, my name is Josh. I, until very recently, worked here at WeWork, and I'm really interested in taking this course because what I was doing back in my homeland of New Zealand, I had a fintech startup and I was in charge of product but never was hands-on with building it. So I feel like I want to backfill a lot of the stuff that I wish I knew when I was building product. So yeah, it's a basically backfilling skills that I wish I had 6 years ago.
I'm Lakeisha. I actually work here at WeWork in technology services. And my background is actually network engineering. I am taking this course just to round out some IT skills that I feel like I might have missed.
Cool.
Okay. My name is Uchenna. I'm a SharePoint consultant with Homeland Security. I'm self-taught, self-SharePoint. A lot of HTML, CSS. I want to kind of go back and kind of get some structured front-end development training and then continue on.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
My name is Nate. I'm a bartender and a cook, and I just want to check this out.
Cool, man. Awesome.
My name is Michelle. I'm currently a full-time stay-at-home dad, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Background is operations management in the retail world. Don't really want to do that anymore, so I want to kind of gain a new skill set to move forward.
Cool. Awesome. So we'll recommend, that is like the worst place to sit because where my computer is, you might either want to move to this side of the class or just move over one more seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should probably work out. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Sounds like everybody's in this for the right reasons. We'll talk a little bit about this point, which is very important, I think. Having especially, I just taught this class. This is my second time teaching this course. I have also talked though with a lot of like General Assembly students, and I did that last time around. And I will tell you that every single person in every one of these types of programs realizes very quickly that learning is hard. It is. You're breaking away from what you're used to. I think, everybody here is probably very ambitious, just knowing the area and the people who are interested in doing something like this. You're very intelligent. You are used to getting things done. You're used to solving problems. But you're also, in many cases, used to at least basically understanding the problem domain that you're trying to solve for, right? And when you get to coding, what you're going to realize is everything's going to feel brand new. And so you're trying to solve the problem and understand what's going on at the same time. And so a lot of the times you're going to be breaking the desk in front of you because you don't understand why the thing isn't working. And when I come over your shoulder and I say you just need to delete that space because you can't have a space between the word and the parameter, it's going to be frustrating. And that's real life. And that happens for every developer. And that happens forever too, just to be clear. I mean, it gets easier. Like you can get more things to work more easily over time. But I was just telling one of my colleagues the other day, I was like, I just spent 2 hours coding all this stuff and I press refresh and it works. There's something wrong. that never happens. So be aware that this is a constant struggle. You will be constantly learning and running into problems that you don't understand. And it will constantly be the case that as you continue to move with technologies, which move so quickly, you're not always going to be sure if it's something about your code, like you missed a semicolon, the syntax or something like that, or if it is something broader or conceptually that you don't understand about what you're trying to build and how you're trying to build it. That's okay, all right? So the good news is we're here for each other. So I'm here, I'm on Slack. I do work a ridiculous amount of hours and don't always have a lot of free time. I have a lot of responsibilities at work, but I try to get to your messages at some point during the day. So if you put them in, I promise I will respond. It just might not be as quickly as you would like or as I would like. That's why it's nice that everybody's in the same channel together, though. You should be able to reach out to each other, put questions into the channel, be able to help each other out where you can. Google is going to be a big friend of yours, so make sure that you're searching for things. We'll go over some of those resources, how to vet what is good solutions to problems and what maybe is not so great. And then in LearnCo, there is an Ask Questions button where you can potentially get a little bit of extra help from some technical folks. So let's see, I'm not sure if I have the, yeah. So there's an Ask a Question button that you can use after Slack is set up where you can ask them questions if you need to. Let's see. So, despite the fact that development is really hard, learning is really hard, this is going to be difficult, there's going to be frustrations, all that type of stuff, development is also really, really cool. Like really, really cool for a lot of reasons. One is it does help you to solve problems more quickly and efficiently. I think everybody in the world should know how to code. Because once you understand the fundamentals about how to code, you're going to start to view your life in a very different way. You're going to be able to, look for, how do I automate this so I don't have to do it anymore? Okay, it makes your life a lot easier. Some of the great things about development too, as opposed to hardware, which we were just talking about, is, well, it's free. Almost everything is open source. There's very few things that you actually have to pay for to be able to code. It's unbreakable, which is largely true. You might like destroy a server or something, but it's all in the cloud now. You just turn it off and turn another one back on. And it's this great creative productivity media for everyone to be able to use. It's just out there and available. It's not just about, I mean, I think a lot of the times when we think about coding, we think about engineering or just functionally getting something done or just automating, but it's also an awesome place to be creative. Because when you start to mess around with the front end and you're creating a UX and you're creating this new dynamic workflow for how people are able to get from point A to point B, or what it looks like when messages show up inside of your inbox or whatever the case may be, there's a lot of creativity even in design. Not to mention creativity more broadly speaking and problem solving. So that it allows you to solve some very unique problems that you probably wouldn't even attempt without a computer because it would take too long to solve the problem. Where you can iterate with computers and get things done quickly, you can't necessarily do that in your daily life. So, some basics around the course plan and how that's going to work. When you go into LearnCo, you're going to see the curriculum. You should already see week 1 is available to you at this point. If it's not, let me know, but it looks like it has green check marks, so I'm going to assume that it's actually working the way it's supposed to. You'll see 2 types of files that exist in each one of these drop-downs, though. Some look like a little book, and some look like little beakers. The books are readmes, which is just basic information that you can read through that gives you some context, gives you some understanding about the coding that we're trying to do for that week. The labs, which we'll do some together today, are actually places where you're being asked to complete an exercise, a coding exercise. You'll be able to open up an IDE in the browser, where we'll be able to add files and add our actual code, and you'll actually be able to run your code here and get feedback on whether what you did was successful or not. Okay, so we'll go through that whole process in a moment, but that's the basic setup of the course. Let's see. All right, so again, in terms of getting help, first reach out to students, do this during class too. We talked a little bit about being active and taking control of your learning and your education here. It is incredibly important that you ask questions when they come up. I'm not always going to know what you're thinking, and you might be thinking that's a dumb question. It's not. I promise if you have that question, somebody else does too. Okay, and we don't want you to struggle with those little things that we might be able to correct early on for a long time down the road. Okay, we want to try and help you to understand some basic concepts really early on. So actually the dumber the question is, the more important it is that you ask the question so that you learn it as soon as possible. Okay. So don't feel bad about reaching out. All right, so that brings us to where we're going to actually start playing around with some of these things. I want to take a little break where I'm going to walk you guys down to where the kitchen, or Josh, would you mind, just because obviously you guys know where this is, can you just walk them down and show them where the bathrooms and the kitchen are in the snack area, and I'll go check with Aaron and see if we can get Charles and, I'm sorry, what's your name again?
You should.
To get to the kitchen,
Yeah.
You go in to the snack bar, to the honesty market.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go around the long
Got
way.
him in one, he said there were 2 sections, right?
Yeah.
Is this the one?
That's the right.
Hey, I'm Josh. How you doing?
It's
Shit.
private.
Yeah.
You
The
chat,
other
you
one
chat,
is
whatever, like all the chat.
Yeah, okay.
It's a lot easier.
I'll take this.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
well, the first few times I tried to do it, I kept getting an
All right.
error message and it didn't work, so.
Some chats.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you guys like to come and see?
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, I'll use it.
No. Okay, yeah.
So are you still?
I'm gonna stick around because I know where it is.
So it looks like I'm in the Slack now.
Okay, so you got into the actual channel all the way?
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
Josh, overachiever.
Yeah, that was like it. Great. Did you do anything special?
No.
It just showed up?
So
Yeah,
you
just-
have to connect it through the learn.co.
Yeah.
I can do
You
that.
don't.
Then you can't get in.
Right.
Yeah.
So from this page where it tells you, hey, you gotta get your GitHub here. You
Yeah.
gotta get your learn.co for Slack here. You have to do it through.
When you clicked on add the Slack account, because it's been a long time for me,
Mhm.
when Uchino did it, he went to the Slack page and it said create a workspace. Did yours do that?
No, it took me. Well, it's gonna open this now.
'Cause-
But what it did was it took me to a page where there were 3 steps that I had to complete.
Okay.
The one was create your username, blah blah blah, create a password.
Okay.
Then it opened up and I was in the Slack chat.
Okay. All right.
But that was from the learn.co page.
Okay. Yeah, so we tried to do that. He went to a different page though, which is
Does he
weird.
already have a Slack account?
He just created one.
So with his organization, he's not using Slack
He's not.
otherwise.
Correct.
I can look at it.
Yeah, when he comes back maybe. Because, yeah, Aaron's gone.
I obviously have the WeWork Slack workspace.
Yeah, sure.
So that didn't even pop up.
Yeah, it just took you directly
It
to...
just once I logged into learn.co.
Yeah, I think what's happening there is they're like connecting the GitHub's email, which would be your regular email, with
Right.
Slack, and then that's what brings you to the right place. But
are they going back into their emails? Because GitHub sent me 6 different emails that
Mm.
said, the first one of which said verify
okay,
your email address.
okay,
Then it takes you back to the learn.co page
okay,
and you go to the second step.
okay,
So whatever, I can't remember what the second step is at this point, but it's in the very first email that it sent you.
okay,
So before your first class, you must sign up for a learn.co account. You should have already received an email invitation to join. Then it says log in, view and track your class. Then it says connect your learn.co to both your GitHub and Slack accounts.
okay,
To do this, follow these steps.
yeah,
Click your avatar at the top right, manage your account.
okay. So all the instructions are actually
Yeah,
there.
they're
Okay,
here.
okay,
Click connected apps, authorize GitHub, authorize Slack by following both steps. And that's in bold.
yeah, okay,
And then it says keep in mind, also in bold, that if you need to create a Slack account, you have to come back to the learn.co Slack page. So I think that is what it may not be happening.
yeah. I think there's something weird, yeah, in the way that they're auth with Slack.
Yeah.
And maybe he just needs to click a verify email or something. Yeah, because he did get like an authentication error when he went there the first time, which is why I had him open the incognito window.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible even that like Slack, because he just did it, isn't ready to authorize him for other applications yet. Like if he tries again, it might actually push him all the way through.
Right. So there was a bit of I want to say maybe a 1 to 2 minute delay
Okay.
between the email and between my authorization.
Okay.
And then I was able to go back in to
Okay.
learn.co.
That might be all it is.
You also have a slide that is media misspelled.
I know. I saw that. Thank you. I must have clicked delete at some point. Yeah. I know. It's even worse because it's literally underlined as I'm talking through it. But thank you.
No problem. So yeah, no, the instructions are here. If they look for their intro to front end, getting ready for day 1 email.
Yep.
The
It shows them,
instructions are
brings you all the way
listed,
through.
like,
Okay.
right there.
Yeah, that's great. Cool.
I'm excited. I've
Good.
got a bunch of stuff floating around
Yeah.
in my head that just needs to gel.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely.
I've done this.
Yeah.
But then I've also done C sharp. And C++.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, which one do I use for? Then I'm in Bash. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll go through a lot of that. I actually was just thinking, minus the PC, there's actually a whole lot of value in actually doing things on your actual computer as opposed to using the IDE. And as we go through the course of the semester, we will definitely do more and more things on our actual computer. But it is different with the PC by a little bit, but enough that like I'm even trying to decide if it makes sense to like bring people into the terminal today.
So
we're gonna do the exact same thing in the IDE, but to understand that and this also exists on my computer and I can do these same things there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll do that.
And I'm in a computer science program for
Are you?
Southern New Hampshire.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm in
an online program, I assume, given you're not commuting to New Hampshire every day.
Not every day.
Yeah. That's awesome. How's that going?
So it's fine. There's this semester or this session, they have me taking touchy-feely classes.
Okay.
And so
because like it's just basic requisite for the
I think so.
Yeah.
So like I'm taking a human relations course as it applies to organizational leadership and development, right?
Okay. Yep.
And I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to manage a team. I literally want to code, so I don't have to talk to people.
Yeah. So I don't have to talk to people. Yeah. No, I get it. People are hard. It's the hardest part of the workplace.
I people so much that I was gone for 10 days for my vacation and then the summer camp.
Yeah.
And when I got back today, and it's great. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling that people missed me, but it was over.
Yeah, it's too much sometimes. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, no, I hear you.
I mean, and that's a testament, to who I am as a person, but I also, play a lot of video games by myself.
Yeah. Are you a Fortnite person? No. Yeah. It's the biggest game of all time.
Yeah, I'm not a kid though.
Yeah, I know.
I still play a lot of Call of Duty.
Okay.
But I'm also playing Injustice and Arkham.
Okay. Yeah.
I like those kinds of things.
Yeah, I haven't been a gamer. My brother started beating me and I couldn't handle it when I was a kid, and I basically,
That's why
I left that to him.
You gotta get up and you gotta work, play different hours.
I know. I would just fight with him physically in the real world. It would make me feel better and we'd move on. But it's true. It's sad, but it's true.
No, it's my little mental vacation. Like right now, I'm playing an online war game, a strategy game, where I run 2 guilds. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's real serious.
Yeah. Do you not have to? I'm not much of a gamer, like I said. Do you not have to manage that stuff during the day?
I do from time so. I ouch.
Contact.
Nerve pain.
Yeah.
I have legitimate ADHD. I have to have that.
Yeah, it's something to pay attention to. Yeah.
Well, if I don't have enough to do in a day, I'm I start cleaning things, moving things around people. Doesn't work in this environment. So I entertain myself.
Yeah, gotta do what you gotta do.
Yep.
Alright, cool.
Is this on my first page?
This is we're going to go next.
Is it under curriculum?
It's under curriculum, and then week 1, and then using a shell, and then my first one.
That. I just got the week 1.
If you click on it, it doesn't open?
So I see week 1,
Yep.
and then it just gives me the information for week 1. Like learn IDE using Shell, the web as a network, HTML basics, and HTML fundamentals.
Let me see. Maybe I didn't click the
But
button.
you are in the instructor version, so maybe you have all of them.
Well, so I have to click a button to actually make those things show up. Maybe I didn't. I thought it did. DC. Goof don't use. Alright, so skip that one. Looks like it should be deployed.
Yeah, week 1 is deployed.
But you should be able to see all those things. Like yours should look the same as mine under curriculum. You shouldn't see week 2, week 3, week 4.
Okay.
But
Yeah, no. I did the week 1 stuff.
okay. Yeah. All right. Hey, look at that. So, I think we want to just try again.
First, might just work now. You go to try to connect with Slack. So, Slack. Yeah, so what's not happening is you're not getting access to the Slack. So if you go to the window,
Flavor again?
go back to
I don't care. I do it.
Yeah. Snack time.
Yes, definitely snack time. And we're gonna have to bring Seed Fishing from because I'm not gonna be able to sit this
Okay,
today.
so we're going in here. Yeah, you already walked in.
Oh,
Are you connected? Are you on a WeWork Wi-Fi? Yeah, okay.
All the adapters are ready. All of the wall
Try to
charts.
sign up with GitHub. So
Basically.
log up to your GitHub. Cool. So then go to this. Okay, put /code.
There's the best view from right here.
this here.
This building, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've never been on the roof though.
What?
I haven't.
Tonight.
Okay.
So think
I am.
here. So if you remember what your password was, using
Chinatown and the Pop.
and click on that
I
password.
haven't even been up to ADM.
You hold down the command.
Apparently there's a rooftop there as well.
I've not been.
Yeah? Like there's
Just sign in.
the security people are such
Try to-
sticklers for who can be in the building and when, and you can't bring a bicycle in, and
Yeah.
then I don't even mess with them.
See that?
It doesn't have.
Actually,
Did you spell your?
and he was hanging out with a guy. He was hanging out with a guy from Germany. It was such a great experience.
Like as far as what though?
The city
so
guy
like, if you're
was actually in London training for
maybe
2 months,
just
and
sit
now
down,
he's
you
going
never
back to
choose
Sydney.
to.
Alright.
We can we do like personalized emails and we track it based on like clicks and contributions and things like that.
Germany, he's a real estate
Yeah.
analyst.
Okay,
And same deal, he was in London to train, and he's like, all right.
We'll have to Slack up there and.
So it was great. Great networking experience.
All right.
Everybody.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start to play around a little bit with the terminal or command prompt to familiarize you with what that is on your actual computer. Let's just start by, most of you have a Mac. If you just go to the search, then it looks like this. But yours is going to be white because you're not a developer yet. Work on that later. But if you go there, And then Charles, in your case, you're going to want to open up, it's going to be called command prompt probably. Okay, cool.
Sorry, what am I typing into the search?
Terminal.
And I'm typing it too.
You'll have to search in your start, but it should be command prompt, it's called.
What am I typing anything else?
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, you're good. So we're going to do these same commands once we get into the Learn IDE, but it's the exact same thing. The PC commands are a little bit different, but other than that, it's the same concept. So what's happening right now is we've opened up a terminal. Terminals were, if you were around for this, I don't think any of you probably were, but terminals were the way that you communicated with a computer back in the day. It was the only way to get access. You didn't have these pretty apps and things that you could click on buttons and things would happen. You had to type everything in. And so these have been kept around for a long time because they give you very root access to what the computer is and what you can do with it and the protocols that's available to it, etc. So even if the applications on the computer aren't exposing everything, the terminal provides you a way to access basically everything in the operating system. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to use it in an incredibly simple way, but it is still important to understand this. It's going to become particularly fundamental for us to understand as we get into understanding how to use Git and GitHub. But we'll do a couple commands today just to start to familiarize you with it a little bit. So the first thing is we want to find out where we are. So we're somewhere in our directory structure on our computer. Okay. The way that we do that is you can type pwd and press enter, which is print working directory. And what that does is it says, hey, I'm in the /users/Samuel Birk directory, which most of you probably are in something similar. So that is just to say I am in this directory here, which is just like your home directory that you'll see on your Mac. Charles, I'm not sure what the equivalents are, but if you just look for command prompt pwd, the equivalent should.
What, for command prompt?
Yeah, do you know?
What are you trying to bring up?
Print working directory. Just wanted to.
You just type dir.
So I think that's probably going to do a list.
Give you a list of the.
Yeah. So the second command is ls on a Mac, which is a list of all the things that are in your current directory. So if I go back and I look at my home directory, I can see that it has the exact same folders and files that are being listed here. Right, so it's just a way for us to be able to list what's in the current directory that we're in. So pwd tells you where you are in your computer in the directory structure. ls provides you with a list of the things in your current directory. So then we can start to move around a little bit in our terminal. So if I want to go into a directory, so here is full measure. So if I go back and look, I'm in my home directory, Samuel Birk, and I should be able to find full measure is there as a directory, and inside of there are all of these other folders and files. So if I want to go inside of the full measure directory, I can type cd, which is change directory, and then full, and then you can actually tab to complete. So if you're not sure what's there, you can press the tab key after you've typed a couple. If there's duplicates, you may have to press tab twice, but it'll give you all the options. So you should be able to cd into a directory, and then if I ls, I'll see what's inside of that directory. If I run pwd, I can print where I am, which is now users Samuel Birk full measure. Okay. So the command line, as we're using it, and largely the way that we're going to use it in this class, is just this, which is moving around inside of your directory structure in your Finder. And the only place where it becomes particularly relevant is when we get to Git, because you'll have to move into the directory where we've created our Git where we created our code, and be able to run some commands that'll push things. We'll get into that later. But does everybody get those three commands? Do we have a pretty good understanding of what they do? So can somebody tell me, what does pwd mean?
Print working directory.
Print working directory. And what does that do if we run it in our terminal?
It shows you where you are in your Finder.
It shows you where you are in your Finder. Okay. What does ls stand for?
A list.
List. And it lists what's in that directory. That's right. And I believe that's the equivalent to that is dir on a PC. So the nice thing about having a Mac is that Mac uses Unix as its operating system base. Most servers use Unix as their operating system base, so all of this largely is useful when you actually start to develop code, even if you're not on a Mac, because most things are Unix. All right, so pwd, ls, and then what is cd?
Change directory.
Change directory, and so if I do cd and then the name of the directory, what happens?
Take you to that folder.
You move into that. Okay, so now if I want to go back up a directory, so if I want to go back into the user Samuel Birk directory, how do I do that? Does anybody have any idea?
Like a back tab,
Yeah, yep. So there's cd dot dot or cd dot dot slash, which will say go up to the parent directory. So if I do that, then I am back in my user Samuel Birk directory. And again, I can see full measure and all my other things. Okay. So that's the basics. We're now going to go into the Learn IDE, and we're going to see that there's a very similar concept there. You're going to have your terminal or your console. These are things that are terms that are used interchangeably, so I might use multiple. Command prompt, all those will work. The way we're going to start here is if you go to Learn Co, go to Curriculum, click on Week 1, click on Using a Shell, and then click on My First Lab. I'm going to go here. Once you get there, you're going to see a blue button in the upper right. It says Open IDE. And if you click on that, it should actually open up this whole development environment for you. So this is an IDE. IDEs are very common. They're referred to integrated development environments. It's just a place to write code and run test against codes and all that kind of stuff. Really all it is, in our case, is a directory structure. Right? So we can see there's a folder called My First Learn Lab QA. It has a spec folder inside of it, and it has some files in it. It has an editor, which is a text editor, which is just a plain text editor. It's exactly the same as Microsoft Word, except that it doesn't do things like bolding and header 1 and all of that type of stuff. Instead, what you generally get is what's called syntax highlighting, which helps you to understand different pieces of your code, which we'll go over in more depth later. But basically, this is just like opening up Notepad on a Mac or text editor on PC. Right? It's exactly the same as opening up one of those things and viewing these files that way, and you can edit it. So we can see a directory structure on the left, we can see our text files that we can edit on the right, and then at the bottom is our terminal or our command line or our command prompt or our console, whatever you want to call it. This has the exact same properties as what we just did with our Macs in the terminal, except that it's on a remote computer. And in fact, all of these things are actually on a remote computer. So we have all of these files exist out on a server somewhere, and we are looking at them through our browser right now. We can interact with that remote computer, which again is Unix, so it'll operate in a very similar way to the Mac, by running things in the command line. So let's go ahead and just do those commands again. So if I type pwd, I should see that I am in home, Samuel Birk, My First Learn Lab, QA internal, which is this directory here. Okay, so in my terminal, I'm inside of this directory, inside of this folder. If I type ls, I should see all of the files and folders listed underneath of that directory. If I type ls, I can see all of those. And if I wanted to, I could cd into any of those directories. So for example, spec, and then run ls, and what I'll see are all of the files inside of the spec directory, and I can cd back up, and ls and pwd, and I'm back in my home directory. I'm inside of this My First Learn Lab QA internal folder. Okay. So again, this part down here at the bottom is our terminal. This part up here is our text editor. This part on the left is just a directory structure for us to be able to post. Any questions about that, how that works? Cool. All right. So the way that the Learn Labs work is they've written some tests, or specs as they're called in Rails, that will test to see if you've actually done what they asked you to do in the README. So I'm going to delete that file and pretend like we're starting from scratch. So there's some special commands inside of this Learn IDE that wouldn't exist on your Mac. The first one is learn, and just to prove this, I'm going to go onto my personal computer and I'm going to type learn, and that does nothing. Okay, it just says that bash command does not exist. But inside of this learn environment, it does do something. If you type learn, it's going to run all the tests. So when I type learn, I get some information back. It says your first Learn lab contains a file called mynewfile.txt. It says that failed. And then it says what my failures are, and more information. It says they ran a test that says expect that the file was added to be truthy, creates a new file in this lesson called mynewfile.txt to pass this test. And we haven't done that yet, and so it's failing. Okay. So if everyone could just type learn and see that they're getting the failure, or if you've done the lesson already, obviously this will pass. But now the actual instructions, so the tests are very useful to read that way so you can see what the actual things are you need to pass. The instructions are also in the README, so it tells you inside of the README that you need to create a new file called mynewfile. But if you actually want to pass the test, look at the test and the instructions. So is everyone able to run learn? Everybody get it to fail? Great. Okay. So this is pretty explicit. It just says, hey, you need to create a file called mynewfile.txt inside of this directory, and then I'm going to be good. We can create new files using the graphical user interface, the GUI. You'll hear developers refer to this as basically anywhere you can click on things is a GUI. So we can click create new file in our case, and then you can just type the name of that file that we need, which is mynewfile.txt with hyphens. And click create, and then that file should show up over here in your directory. So you should have a new file. It doesn't have anything in it, it's just an empty file. You can type things in it if you want to.
Wait, I think I'm a couple steps behind.
Yep.
How do you go back and say I'm not in the correct directory?
Yeah, so if you type pwd, you should be in something like home/your-name/my first learn lab QA internal. Are you inside of, does it have an additional thing that says spec after that, or?
Yeah.
So if you do cd space ... enter, and then pwd again, the spec should go away.
So it's saying home?
You might be too high now.
Yes. No, it's okay. This is part of the thing. So to figure out where we want to go, so you're in the home directory, so if you do ls here, so this is the thing you can go into, so you want to go back into the view chapter.
Okay.
So if you do cd space capital V, you should go to tab. Yep. And then enter, and then you can do ls again. And then we're going to go inside of my first learning lab, so if you do cd space my dash enter.
This is actually
And then if you
on the way to so this was kind of
Well,
the guys for
I think this is correct, but it doesn't have to stay on this.
Yep, that's all. Yes, that's right.
So these documents here,
Yep.
if you edit them at some point,
Yep.
are they like lost forever?
No, it's okay. So they're using GitHub on the back end for everything, so you can't actually destroy anything.
Actually, I think that's what it is. I don't have this story.
And so sometimes that happens just because of like slow internet. Oh, you know what it is? This usually happens because you have the IDE open to browsers and to tablets.
Which is the favorite
refresh.
user?
Yeah.
Click on that. Oh, here, type a capital Y. And the button. Yeah. Capital Y. Yep. And then press capital Y. Oh,
I mean, look at that too.
refresh. Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, so does everybody now have something that looks like mine and should be able to run learn and fail?
No, I think I went up too far as well.
Okay, yeah.
So now when I do,
Yeah, so you're in the home
I'm in the
directory.
home
So if you do ls, yes, you want to cd into L, so space L, and then tab, complete the rest of it. Oh, it's a 1. It's,
I typed it out.
oh, you did. Wait, is this a 1 though? Maybe?
No.
Press. Yeah, so press up. Type L, so it'd be LCUT. Basically, we want to type that whole.
Oh, that's a one. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's what you mean.
Yeah. They just look exactly the same. Yeah, so after you type similar, you can tab. And then enter. And then PWD. Yeah, okay, so that's good. We're getting close to that. So if you do LSE and then we want to CD into, if you do CD space my tab. Okay, now you're back. So if you type learn, then you should get it. Yeah, you're in a good spot. So, and you got it. Yeah, so you're all good.
Okay.
So that's the failing test happening up there. Run the right directory, all this stuff.
Yeah, mine didn't.
You went too far too. So if you type ls,
Okay, I did
I've
that,
done-
and up here.
okay, so yeah, so you want to cd into my dash first. So if you do my and tab, it just auto completes with tab. So
Okay.
and then you press enter. Now you're back.
Okay.
Okay, so is everybody? I think Josh, you're the only one that didn't check. Are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
You good? Okay.
So I haven't created the my new file yet.
Yeah. So if you type.
Okay.
So if you type learn and you haven't created my new file, you should get a failing test that looks like this,
Got it. Okay.
and it'll say why it's failing. So you can see it's supposed to contain a file called mynewfile.txt,
Okay.
and it doesn't. So to create that file, if you just click create new down here,
Okay.
and then file,
Got
you can just create a file named that. And once you do, then when you type learn, it should pass.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's green and it says 1 example 05.
I type in QA internal.
No, you just type learn. The word learn.
Okay.
That'll learn is a shortcut to run the tests. Is really what it's doing.
Does that in the path name or no? Just leave.
It's just so against the heart here,
Mm-hmm.
you just type the word learn.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. And so then let's make sure, has everybody gotten to a green state? Does everybody have success? We actually all have a file there. Yep. Okay. So this is basically how you're going to do your homework. This is how you're going to work on labs in class. You're going to do whatever the README tells you to do. You're going to type learn. You're going to run the test. The test should give you more insight into what you potentially messed up. And then when things are all green and all of your tests are passing, then you can type learn space submit. And that's actually going to mark you as done. So you'll see this little button over here changes to completed, and you're all good. So there's learn and there's learn submit to actually submit the things. And this is written down in the labs too, so you can always go back to the README and work through this process again. But
If you try to submit and
it's failing.
failures, will that submit?
It's a good question. I think it will. I don't think it matters. Like, I think you can do it again. Like, it's not like thing you're done and you can never go do this again. But yeah. That is something though. Like Aaron brought up, you're gonna fall behind. You're not going to get it all done. That is very true. It's okay. In fact, what I would urge you to do is if you're on a problem, on a particular problem set or a particular lab for more than 25 minutes, first thing is put something into the Slack channel to ask a question. Second thing is, if you're not getting a response quickly, just move on to the next thing. It's better to get a perspective from different angles than to just sit there frustrated on a single thing because you don't know where a space is that shouldn't be there. Okay. So it's not to say don't struggle, but it is to say only struggle for so long. Even on our dev team, we have a rule about that. If you're stuck on a problem for more than 15 minutes, reach over the aisle and ask somebody to come help you out. So it's important not to get stuck on something for too long. Okay. So everybody got that learn to complete and submit, and we got all the things. Great. Cool. So now we basically understand what our labs are going to look like, what the course is going to look like. Now we're going to start to actually get into some fun stuff. So we're going to get into coding. We're going to talk a little bit about what coding is. We're going to start with talking about what the internet is. I'm not sure how much of a history everyone has with this, but so what is the internet? Can somebody explain it to me in 15 seconds or less?
The infrastructure that connects all the computers into a network.
Yeah, that's right. It's just the infrastructure that connects all the computers into a network. It's just allowing computers to talk to other computers from far, far away, right? Or very close together even, which is where networking really started, was in a room wanting to connect one computer to another computer and have them be able to communicate with each other. They expanded those ideas out further and further. Lakeisha could probably tell us a lot more about that than I'd be able to. But that's the idea. So the internet is just this connection of computer to computer, right? To computer, and they're all just connecting to each other, and sometimes they're going back and forth. So horrible marker. So in addition to that, right, your computers are on the internet, and these terms are a little bit dated, and they're a little bit less useful today than they were in the past, but I think it's still valuable for us to start thinking this way. So we're going to talk about having a server and a client. Anybody ever heard these terms before? Anybody want to try to give a definition of between the two? Yeah.
A server is where it's like a data repository,
Yep.
and the client is what requests
Yep.
the data.
Yep. So that's a great definition. So most of the time, what we're talking about here is, let's say, has anybody heard of AWS Cloud?
Yes.
Anybody? Okay. Does anybody have any idea what that is? Thing. Basically, it's a whole bunch of computers that actually exist somewhere. Like most of ours are just in Northern Virginia. They're not that far away for my company. But what happens is you can start up servers as sort of virtual machines, and you can kill them and create them as you want to. You just click buttons, and your server gets created. But there's farms of servers that exist out in the world that host code, right? So Google has a ton of these. Amazon has a ton of these. Individual companies have them. WeWork might have some here. I don't know if they're using AWS or not. But it's a computer that has some code on it. And basically what's happening is usually the client, your most common interface with a client is your browser. It's the thing that's on your computer that is going to make a request to a server for some information. In your case, it's usually over HTTP. You are asking for it to respond to you with some information that it can put into the browser. Usually that's HTML, and we'll see also JavaScript or CSS. But you are making a request from your browser to the server saying, hey, give me whatever you have at this particular endpoint, and I'm going to then try to display it. So it makes the request, and then the server responds and says, yep, I got that. Sometimes it's an error, most of the time it's a success, and you're actually able to view the thing in the browser. So I just mentioned some of the pieces of information that you would typically get back when you're making a browser request. So when you go to google.com, for example, it's going to make a request to the server saying, give me whatever you're hosting at google.com. It's going to give you back some HTML, some CSS, and some JavaScript. Your browser will use that information to actually display google.com to you. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. The reason why I said these are a little bit confusing, or they're a little bit dated, is that nowadays, like, everything is a client and a server at the same time. So like my computer can be a server and a client at the same time. In fact, oftentimes when I'm developing, it is doing both of those roles at the same time for me, so I don't need the internet to be able to do development. Okay. In our case, the technologies that we're going to work with, this is not necessary in any way whatsoever at all. Okay. All you need is the client, because the client is the thing that runs all of the type of code that we're going to be working on today. There's JavaScript, CSS, and HTML are all rendered by a browser. Okay, so you don't actually need a server to run any of it. Nonetheless, the advantage of the server is that it makes it available publicly. So anybody who goes to a URL can go and find what you're serving. Okay, but that is the only necessity for the technologies that we're using to have a server. So we'll even get into later in class where we'll be putting some files onto our computer, and we will just double click on the index.html and a whole web page will show up, and it'll run the JavaScript, and it'll do all the wonderful things that we want it to do. Okay. Just to prove that this is how things are working, I am going to go to google.com and I'm going to open up. You'll see yours might be formatted slightly differently, like your stuff might be at the bottom, etc. But you're going to see that we have HTML, and we're going to go over what all this HTML is. You have some styles, and in fact, if we go to sources, we can see all the files that are being downloaded from Google. So it's downloading some images, it's downloading some JavaScript, it's downloading some JSON information, all kinds of stuff. If I go to a simpler site, so if I go So this is the beginnings of what will be your final project, but it is a much simpler site. You can see we have an index.js file, which has some JavaScript in it. We have an index.css file that has some CSS in it. And we have an index.html file, which has our HTML in it. So we're making a request to the server. It's returning us these 3 files, and then those 3 files are being rendered by the browser to show us this information here. Okay. Any questions about server-client relationship, how any of that stuff happens? Okay, awesome. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we can go ahead and go into the Experiencing HTML lab, which is just a little bit further down in the curriculum. So it's under week 1 again, HTML Basics, Experiencing HTML lab. And we're going to open an IDE. And you should see the directory structure looks a little bit different than it did before. And there should be a file called my_list.html inside of there.
You said there should be a MyList file?
I believe so. Is there not? I might have created it. So we can go ahead and create mylist.html. You just need to create new file and then name it my_list.html. So you should just, does everybody have a file that's there?
Yeah, there's also a list_repack.md file. That's what was originally
Yeah. So MD is Markdown. That's usually README information. I don't know why there are 2 of them, but I would ignore it. Okay, but so we have our list. I deleted things from here, which is why it now has this yellow circle up here, which means I need to save it. You can press Command S and it'll go away, or you can click on it and it'll go away. You know, if I make another change, oops. So I can click on it and it'll go away, or I can press Command S on the Mac and it'll go away. So it's just saving the file. All right, so we're just going to create a list quickly. Cheeses, let's say, so provolone, pepper jack, American cheddar. I don't know. Does anybody have any favorites?
Havarti.
I can't spell that.
Huh?
Let's do feta. Parmesan. You guys are crazy. I'm probably also misspelling this. Huh? Mozzarella. Well, mozz. Yeah. All right. Cool. So we have a list of cheeses. You guys are gonna have to teach me some things about cheese. All right. So we have a list of cheeses. What we're gonna do is we're gonna actually serve this to a website using the IDE. This Learn IDE has provided you with a server that'll get created and it'll stand up a little website for you. Where you can actually go and view these things. The way that we do that is by typing in HTTP server, HTTP server. And when you do that, if you press enter, you're going to see that it creates this little green line that says now serving your directory at HTTP, and then this is called an IP address and a port, which is how the internet actually works. So you normally put in like google.com, but google.com resolves to an IP address, which is something that looks like this, 67.205.2. So we're going to copy that, HTTP : / all the way through what comes after the colon, so all these numbers, and open.
Tricks copying it. Mine's getting an error when I try to copy it.
What?
You know, you get that noise?
Oh, yeah.
I did Command C. So copy, will that not work?
No.
Should work.
I'll Google it.
So you're going to right click on it, try to right click on it,
So
and then
now we copy.
Lost that for a minute.
Oh, yeah. So on a PC rather, when you do HTTP server and you go to copy, you can't use Control C because Control C will kill the terminal.
No, joking, right?
I think you're copying this.
Yeah, really?
It's just because I think it's probably lies though. I bet if you went and pasted it and ignored the alarm bell, it would work.
I tried to I tried to enter it, pasted it.
That's weird.
Alright,
But there's nothing special.
Yeah.
So then, copy.
You might want to use Google Chrome though for examples that we use.
It's killing that end part, right?
There's actually one you Safari.
And then just put that in a new browser.
Yeah. And ideally, yeah, I mean, Chrome is going to be the best for the examples that we use later. You can do it there.
Firefox.
Oh, am I not in Chrome?
That's smart. That's
Yeah, but it's fine for that.
Well, everything figures out in Explorer.
So
Okay, so that's great. So you want to be-
Hold on, I don't think I'm copying this.
So I use Safari.
So yeah, just try to highlight
It's just this for
all of
the
that.
second
Yeah.
one.
That makes sense.
Yep, and then you just Command C, and then go to a new. It looks like you're missing part. I think. Yeah, safe for a second. There you go.
Look at Windows.
Be able to. So that's good. So if you can copy this HTTP all the way through that.
What is going on right here?
Let's see.
Oh, it looks like you're already there actually. That's what
So
paste. Yeah, okay, that's good.
okay.
So you do want to.
So I did put the quotation marks. Then I think maybe that's why you're.
Is everybody there?
Interesting.
Okay, so you'll see a screen that looks like mine, but not zoomed in a billion times. Let me back up. That's weird. So anyway, so we have our files and folders are showing up here just like they are inside of your directory structure. The reason why it looks like this is the way that browsers interpret pages and directory structures, etc., is they expect a file named index.html to be at the root. If we had named our file index.html instead of mylist.html, it would have just shown you the page. It would have shown you our list. Because we didn't do that, it doesn't know what it should render, and so it just shows you a list of files so that you can find what you're looking for. So we can click on mylist.html, and you'll see that our browser now changes to /mylist.html, and we have our list of cheeses. And your developers, go home. See you later. No. So this didn't quite do what we wanted it to do, probably though, right? I mean, we wanted to create a list, and this is just like jumbled up stuff. Why don't we have breaks? Why don't we have, what's that?
Mine has breaks.
Does yours have breaks in it?
In a list.
How did you do?
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Mine's not.
Oh, but it's because you called it .text. So it is rendering it as a text
Okay.
file and not as an HTML file.
Okay.
If you rename it to .html, it'll look like this.
That's why.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Cheating. I'll come back to that later. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody at this.
Yeah, mine is giving the error that it gave you.
Do you have to
It's this one, right?
It's that one, yeah, so if you click on it.
Try to flash you up.
Do you, let's see. So you do have to be careful with having the IDE potentially open in multiple browsers at once. It causes problems. It doesn't look like you have that issue. Let's try to just refresh the page here.
You're gonna maybe transfer I'm never coming. You're lucky you're coming. I would never have come here to support you if I knew you could already do this.
So let's try that again.
Tell us that.
You're cheating too, Josh?
No, I'm just I'm gonna play around.
Yeah.
I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not struggling.
Yeah. Alright, so let's try this again. So it could be that the server you created got out of date. Yeah, okay, there we go.
Thank you.
So if you kill the server and restart the server, you might get the same server or it might move somewhere else. So it's possible that you were able to open it the first time, but then we killed it, and when we recreated it, it was gone. I think that's what happened. Okay, so we have a list that's not a list, and this isn't great, and the reason is that this is not a text file, this is an HTML file, and so we have to use HTML to make it look like a list. HTML is hypertext markup language, so it's just markup. What it means is we're going to wrap our words in code to tell it how it should be structured on the page. Okay? So the first thing we're going to learn how to do is how to create a list. So there's a couple different types of lists that exist inside of HTML. We're going to start with what's called an unordered list, which is say we don't want a number to go next to our list items. We just want it to assume it's an unordered list, so it's just going to be a bulleted list. The way that you do that in HTML, if we go back to our IDE, we are going to create a UL element or tag. So you'll hear HTML referred to as elements or tags. UL is unordered list. That's what that means. We're going to then want to put all of our cheeses inside of the unordered list, and we're getting closer. So this is just saying I want on my page now to display an unordered list. Inside of that unordered list, I want to display provolone, pepper jack, cheddar cheese, etc. We're still not quite there though. So in an unordered list, you have to also define each of the list items. So in order to do that, we're going to wrap each of our cheeses with an LI tag, which is a list item. And then I'm going to cheat. So if you advanced moves. Cheddar. So there's some keyboard shortcuts I'm using. Command D deletes an entire line. If you have your cursor on a line and you press Command Shift D, it'll duplicate the line. But you don't need to know how to do that. Just level up skills. Alright, so once we have that, and you save it, you'll see in your IDE it says change detected. So it's already actually updated our server. So if we go back to the page and refresh, actually see the change. And you should see something that looks like this. What's up?
So I'm still getting used to this. Right?
Yep.
and I hate that I don't have a backspace.
Oh, yep,
with the lead.
yep.
So when it goes to close the statement, it's typing close.
So that's that's actually the IDE itself. It's trying to be helpful. So it's not Mac. It's just going to happen here.
Okay.
It's trying to help you code. It's just not doing a good job in this case. Its expectation is that you would have started from scratch like this.
Right.
And so when you type UL, it's then going to close it for you so that you can then type inside of that LI. And then inside of that, you can type pro. So it's trying to help. It's just not because we wrote the list first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't it true that some IDEs that we use developing will do this for us and others won't?
Yes, it is absolutely true. And in fact, in many cases, it's like settings that you can configure to do or not do.
So we're getting spoiled right now.
Well, not necessarily. So Atom and Sublime, no. So
Atom does it.
Yeah. Atom does it, Atom.io, which is free. Sublime is very similar to Atom. It is technically free, but you'll get an annoying please purchase me every once in a while if you use it. It doesn't cost very much if you purchase it anyway, but you're not getting that spoiled. This is a pretty common if you use either one of those things. Yeah. You're getting spoiled relative to if you opened up Notepad. But yeah, but I wouldn't recommend using Notepad for your development. You could. I've done it before. It's not great. This helps a lot more. You get syntax highlighting, which is why you see how it knows that this is a HTML tag, so it's highlighting it in brown. Right. So you get that syntax highlighting.
Is that also why in this case we wouldn't need the HTML tags?
So no. So you still need you actually absolutely always need the HTML tags if you want it to render correctly inside of it.
The unordered list tag, does it always produce bullet points?
It always produces bullet points. So if you wanted to have an ordered list, you would use OL instead of UL, and you have to make sure you close things correctly. But now if I go back, you can see it actually has the numbers. So there are lots of different HTML tags that you can use for a variety of purposes. The best place to go look for those things actually is W3 Schools, which I'll put in Slack quickly. But there's a ton of information on HTML and all the different tags and what they do and attributes that you can change and all of that. It's definitely something, if you want to get ahead to go read through these things. I'll put that in Slack now.
Is it safe to say the closing tag will always have a /?
Yes, the closing tag will always have a / and it will always match the opening tag. We'll also have a /. We'll learn later that not all tags need a closing tag, but if it has a closing tag, then it'll have a /. Another important thing to note while we're here is you see how I nested the tags? So we have OL, which is an ordered list, and then nested inside of there are all of my LI tags. You can see that they're, in my case, they're tabbed over, but it's like 2 spaces. You'll hear tag, and then the tags that are nested underneath of that in a format like this so that you can keep track of where things are. The big thing is it helps you to know where you're ending things. Right? So I started the OL here, I ended here, I can tell that I actually closed everything that I opened because if I go straight down my page vertically, I can see that my OL is being closed. Same thing with the LI. I mean, in this case, they're in line, but we could just as easily write it this way. But you see, that's not very well formatted, right? My LI on the bottom is to the right, and so it's going to make it harder for me later to tell that it's actually closed. As you get more and more code, it becomes more and more difficult to tell that you're actually closing things appropriately. So nesting your code this way is incredibly important. OCD is a valuable skill set in coding. just to be clear about that.
I noticed, just playing around with this now, if you were to remove that closing tag of the order list, is a red axis would show up.
Yes.
Pretty much just letting you know
that's the IDE trying to tell you, hey, you opened this, but you didn't close it, so you have something going wrong. In fact, if you do that and you scroll over it, it says expected tag name got something else, not a particularly useful error, but here we go. Expected closing tag, expected end of file. So it is saying you're missing a closing tag. It doesn't tell you what it is.
Do people usually do development work in programs like Atom?
Yeah, so a lot of people program in Atom or Sublime. I use what's called RubyMine, which is just a little bit more full-featured IDE, but it's the same concepts. It's the same things. In fact, I used Sublime for the first year of my company despite people telling me to go to RubyMine. RubyMine is made by IntelliJ. IntelliJ makes IDEs for all kinds of code, all kinds of programming languages, including Java and JavaScript and all kinds of stuff. The major advantage of IntelliJ over some of the others to me is the ability to jump to functions. So let me see if I just open up like. So this is real good. You don't have to understand what this does at all right now. But if I want to go, so this right here is reference to what's called a class. Inside of that class is a different additional code that's actually being run on this line. If I want to go see that, I could in Atom or Sublime search all of my files to try and find that name. Or in IntelliJ software, I can just command click and it takes me there. That's a pretty big deal when you're trying to like navigate all this stuff. So. But yes, everybody uses some form of an IDE, or they just don't know that they exist. Now there are people who are still old school and they like to use in-app browser or in-app editors. So you can actually, like, let's see, do I have something? If I go into WebTech, has some stuff here. Yeah, I'll do something that has some HTML in it, so you can see what I mean. So it used to be, remember, that you didn't have any applications at all on a computer, and so if you wanted to edit your text files like we're doing now, you'd have to do that in the terminal too. So you can use things like Vim or Emacs or Nano. There's lots of text editors that exist inside of the terminal. My personal favorite is VI. I don't use them very often, but there was a time when I thought it would be cool to learn how to do this. You do use them when you're interacting with servers, because oftentimes your servers don't have a front end, and so you don't have any other choice but to edit the text files this way. So I can VI, let's see, index, there should be an index, yeah, index.html. And that opens up the code in line here, and I can actually edit it in the terminal, and then save it. In my case, I don't want to, but you can save it and quit. Out of it. So that was an aside, but hopefully somewhat interesting, useful. At some point you'll use VI, and so it's useful to know that it exists. All right, cool. So we have a list. Everybody was able to create an actual ordered list. Do we have any questions about what's going on with HTML or nesting or any of these things? All right, so let's go ahead and take just like a 5-minute break so everybody can kind of stand up and walk around a little bit, and then we'll come back and keep going. So Josh, are you just taking some time off now, or are you?
Yeah, it's sort of a mix of things. So I'm having my first kid in about.
Oh, congratulations! That's awesome. Yeah. In
so,
6 weeks, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
so you might disappear from here towards the end, I would imagine.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So my wife is going to take 4 months off.
Okay, that's great.
We're over in the States for her, but she's a diplomat from New Zealand, so
okay.
she's close to DC.
Yeah.
And so she can take 4 months.
Okay, that's awesome. Is that a typical New Zealand policy? Like, do people generally get that long for maternity leave?
Yeah, so the rules in New Zealand are that you get 6 months paid, and then 6 months you can take unpaid.
Oh.
So your choice is to whether you want to take all that, but that's what's on offer.
Yeah.
Since she's on post in another country, she can only take up to 4 months.
I see.
She could go back to New Zealand, take it full time, but she wants to stay here and continue going. So,
sure.
Yeah, if she wanted to take longer than 4 months, I'd just find someone else to replace her in that position.
Yep.
So from that point, when she goes back to work, then I'll be primary caregiver.
Okay.
And so I kind of need to find something that will work in with that, at least
yeah.
line of it.
Yeah.
And the other point was just I felt like been in this role for enough time and gotten out of it what I could get out of it, so the time is right to
move on to something else. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I'm still actually talking to WeWork about another role.
Okay.
And I really like WeWork as a company. And, but yeah, I just need to find something that I can grow, but also will work down the line with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, development definitely lets you work from anywhere. So,
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say there are definitely some advantages of being on a team and being in a physical space, especially when you're getting started. Yeah. But it is nice to be able to be anywhere and be able to get your work done and get it pushed out. And the internet makes all that possible too, right? So,
totally.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, in fact, I mean, there are whole companies that are completely distributed for software engineering purposes. I'm trying to think of, what are those, like Groupons? There was another one like that was here in DC, actually. Social something.
Living Social.
Yeah, Living Social. Their whole thing is distributed. Everything's distributed. They do stand-ups and they do the whole agile process, but they do it all through Google Hangouts and Slack now, probably. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a neat world to live in. And it's such high demand. I mean, there's not nearly enough developers for the amount of work to be done. Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool thing to be in. I think of it as like what it must have been like to be a mechanic when automobiles were first created. Nobody really knows how these things should really work or what they're supposed to do, so it's constantly changing and evolving, but you get to see it kind of meld and come to be what it's going to be. Yeah.
And is their world going to end in 20 years?
Right, exactly, and so will ours, right? Like as developers, is that going to come to an end? And I mean, probably even faster given information exchange.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the thing that really fascinates me about coding is everything keeps getting abstracted up, right?
Yeah.
And all the languages get more and more human friendly.
Yes.
At what point is it drag and drop and type in something?
So they've tried this several times already, actually, in development, and have failed horribly every single time.
Yeah.
So there are certain problem sets that are solvable that way. And once you understand the problem domain, you can simplify the problem to the point where it is drag and drop. So for example, creating a personal website or a website for your business that's understood, it's easy enough to do. Wix or Squarespace, they do a great job. If you're planning on becoming a developer so that you can make a lot of money in that domain, you're probably going to lose out. Where it becomes interesting and where developers become particularly useful and where drag and drop fails horribly is customized and complex problem sets that you're trying to solve. Because it's real people trying to engineer real solutions.
Yeah.
The code is just a tool in the end, right? It's not actually the thing that makes it particularly valuable.
Yeah.
But code, because it can utilize computers' speed and efficiency and repetition, it gives you additional possibilities to solve more complex problems. But it's the solving of the complex problem that is difficult to drag and drop replace.
So I noticed that recently there's something like more than half of code that is written by Google is written by machines. So is that likely to be stuff that is in easy problem domains?
So I don't know what they mean by that. Like there's all kinds of things that could potentially mean. So one concept is what's called metaprogramming, in which case it's like I want to have code that basically does the same thing over and over again minus some small changes. And so I'm going to write code that creates code that has those minor changes in it, right? Or such that if somebody adds like a new entry into a configuration file, it adds some additional code to make my life easier as a developer or for the machine to understand or whatever the case may be. So it could be that. It's probably that, as opposed to what we might think of as like smart machine coding, which is like where you create some code and you say, here's a problem domain, I want you to now go figure out what the right code is to solve that problem domain. I don't think that exists. Sure. I don't think that's real yet, right? Like that's far too complex of a problem to be able to solve. It would be like asking a computer, which people have also tried to do, to like write an academic paper. So here's all the content in this academic domain. I want you to now, based on the information there, the language used, the concepts, go write an academic paper, and let's see if we can get that past some humans. And that's not very successful, right? And it's the same concept with code, except maybe worse because you actually have to solve problems and detect bugs and errors and correct for that. So yeah. So I think that's probably what they mean.
Yeah.
Which is actually not so interesting because yes, it's largely, I've solved this problem here. I want to allow the machine to rewrite that code for a slightly different concept of that problem.
Yeah.
But,
good headline.
What's that? Oh, it's a great headline. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, while we're waiting for Keisha to get back, does anybody have any, just random questions about the world of technology or development? Why things exist the way they do? Is anybody afraid that the robots are coming?
Is nesting an official term? Like nesting?
Yeah, nesting, yeah, that's real.
Random question about operating systems.
Yep.
So for me as a PC user, could I use Ubuntu?
Yes.
Ubuntu to do
very similar things. Yeah, so you could install a virtual machine that has Ubuntu on it, which is a Linux machine, but it also has like a GUI interface, so it'll feel very much like a PC actually. But then when you open up the terminal inside of there, it will look just like ours. And you can install like Google Chrome and all of your regular apps on there. So you could definitely do that if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yep.
You can switch back and forth.
Yeah, so with a virtual machine, if you look into how to do that, basically the virtual machine itself opens up as an app, and it's like opening a window. It's like if you why can't I the term remote desktop into another Microsoft machine. It's like that, except it's just on your computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe related, you mentioned that most people code in an IDE.
Yep.
And do you mean as distinct from just using Atom? Sublime?
No, so the Atom and Sublime can be IDEs. They're kind of IDEs. So the piece, they certainly can be IDEs. They can be used as just text editors. So there's a couple different pieces. So generally speaking, an IDE has a couple of things. One is syntax highlighting, which Sublime and Atom will have out of the box. The second thing generally is some way to actually run and debug code that's in the actual application that you have open. Atom and Sublime actually do have those, or at least they have packages that you can install that will essentially create a terminal inside of the app that you can do things with. Frequently, though, people will just open up Atom and open up their terminal and use them separately, in which case it's kind of an IDE, it's kind of not. But everybody at least would use Atom for syntax highlighting, and everybody would use the terminal or a terminal in Atom for running code, debugging code. So everybody uses these tools. Yeah.
So what else would be useful in an IDE that you don't get from just having Atom and terminal?
Most of the time, nothing, except for those little things like being able to command click from class to class. That is almost all I use it for. There are other things, like in an IDE, oftentimes they'll have, like you'll actually see this when we start using Atom and Git together, they'll show you files that have been committed and pushed and files that haven't been committed and pushed. They'll be highlighted in different colors, and they'll tell you like what your branch is and that type of thing. So it'll give you some additional context or information about your development environment and where you are. Yeah, but it's largely just like helpers. It's just, yeah.
You know how we like set up, I don't know how to refer to it, but a live web page?
A what?
A live web page that we just set up on that last exercise.
Yep.
Is that, like, could you install a package to allow yourself to do that from Atom?
To
or
do
is that something that you build into an IDE?
So are you talking about like how it was able to like actually show up on a website?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is happening. That technically has nothing to do with the IDE. That is happening because of some special things that Flatiron did inside of the Learn environment to make it show up there. We'll go over some ways of potentially making that actually happen in your own life. You can, so usually what you would, the simplest way to do it is that you purchase a hosting domain, a hosting server, and you purchase a domain which costs like $10 a year, and then you would upload your files via FTP or SSH or some other way onto that server, and then when you go to the domain, it'll just show up there.
Yeah.
So they're just doing that for you, like behind the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all. Yeah.
So if you were just coding at home, you could just load it from your local drive, or do what you refer to then have a server.
Yeah, so with the stuff that we're doing, you're mostly just going to want to do it on your local drive. So you'll just open up, so here I can show you even. So open up Sublime, which is like Atom. I'm going to copy our list that we created inside of here. I'm going to save this file. So I'll just put it on my desktop. I'm going to save it as my list.html. And if I go back to my desktop, there's my list.html. I just double click, it just opens.
Yeah.
And then I can make changes to it. So you don't get the fancy auto saving stuff that happens, but I can change provolones and save it. And if I go back, there it is, provolones. Yeah. So all the stuff that we'll be doing, you can do it like that, and you don't have to worry about doing the server. We'll go over some ways to create the server, but you don't have to worry about it.
Good.
Yeah. Cool. All right, great. All right, so I think the way that I want to use the rest of the classes, we'll go over a couple more tags just to give you some insight, and then I'm going to let you start to work on some of the labs so that you can ask questions. I'm going to ask you to work in groups when we work on the labs. So for convenience, we'll just split the class for now. So one of you will actually have the computer, the other two will sit next to each other, and you're just one person's going to write the code, the other people are going to help you to write the code. So it's called pair programming. It's usually 2 people. We're going to have an extra person because you might need a little bit of extra help. But this is a very common development technique. Everybody uses it. I use it every single day. I call somebody over and we look at the code together, and you can help each other solve the problem more quickly. So that's going to be the plan. So I'll just do a couple other tags, as they're called. So H1 is just a header. So this is a big header. So this is the same as in Microsoft Word or in Google Docs, choosing the headline 1. It's just going to make a big header. If I do H2, and now if I go back to my list and refresh the page, I lose my server. There we go. So I just have this is big and headline 2. There are, I believe, 6 levels of headers that you can use to go further and further down in terms of size. So that's headers. Another one is the paragraph tag, which is just a P. This doesn't do anything particularly special, but if you have a lot of text and you want it to look like a paragraph, then you can wrap it in the paragraph tag, and we'll see just a basic paragraph. Another one that you're going to come across in the labs today is the table. So a table has rows. Those rows are noted as TR, and then rows have columns, which are noted with TD. And this is how you create just a basic like Excel looking file. Get out of here, Siri. So it just creates a table structure, right? And so I can create a second row then. If I copy that whole row, and I can say 2, column 1, 2, column 2. You see, it just puts them underneath of each other in a directory structure.
People don't put space in between their tags for the different elements in their code.
So, for example, let me get back. So, like here, you mean putting a space like here?
Yeah.
So you can. It's largely about So the most important thing in all coding, especially because most coding will be done on teams, is readability.
Right.
So the most important thing is to come up with conventions with your team to know what the most readable thing is going to be. There might be, usually spacing is used for logical separation. So in this case, we have 2 rows, and so it might be reasonable to logically separate those 2 things. I generally don't do that because you can't really see it on the screen there. Let me see if I open this and you see that? You see those lines that are there? So I don't need the space here because I can look at this line and see that that line is connecting the opening and ending. But I totally get why you would want to create a space, and you totally can create a space. So spacing in most languages, all the languages that we're going to use in this class don't care about space at all. One space might make a difference. So for example, you can see I put column 1 here, and it has 1 space. If I put a ton of spaces, that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Which is also why I could put the li tags on the same line, or I could break them onto multiple lines. White space doesn't matter. The code gets read in the end as though there's no spaces. So if you imagine if I replace all these spaces like this, that's how the browser is actually reading it. Except for it does, HTML allows for the 1 space for spacing letters like that. But other than that, it doesn't, space doesn't matter at all. It's exactly the same code. So when you're writing code and you're creating spaces, most of the time it is simply about readability. You're trying to make it more readable for somebody else who's looking at your code, or for yourself when you go back to look at it later. All right. So that's tables, those are columns, those are rows. Actually gives you a decent amount of stuff before we get into actual HTML structure, but you should have enough now that you can start working on the labs. So we'll use the end of class here to work in groups again. On the labs, it might make the most sense just so that everybody's not crowding around a small screen. And we break, so 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you 3 can all be together. Does that make sense? So just go ahead and start with the first lab, which I think we actually got through a decent amount of. But you can actually start working on the Experiencing HTML lab, which is the last one we opened the IDE in, which is going through creating a list. But you're going to want to actually get it to pass your learn tests and submit. So for homework, you need to get through all the HTML basic labs. So there's 4 of them here. So there's Experiencing the HTML lab, your first HTML tag lab, well-formatted HTML, and then create an A tag with an href. But you don't necessarily need to get through all of those right now. Just work through what you can. Cool?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that
Close.
if we're looking at a reading,
This one.
let's see what
Yep.
Okay. I guess we have to type both of those words.
That's the first thing we need to do, is create a text file with the list.
We did that.
So,
So test our code and just put learn, right?
Test code, I thought we put done. Was it done?
If you go to learn, it will run the test and it'll tell you if they passed or failed.
Okay, I did that and I didn't get anything.
Are you still running the server?
Yeah, I am running it.
Okay, so if you go to Control City, that will run the test. Get out of the server.
And then you can do it,
Yeah,
okay.
then you're back
Okay.
on it.
So we're supposed to do something against this.
So,
Oh, I think it's
Sometimes you
if you type the word
Right. Alright, so in this case,
test, it says one example, 0 values. So
yeah.
if you go to learn space. Now that's going to try and sync with your GitHub and push that file to your GitHub. So do it. And then you see that this is two rows and this is
Oh, okay. Alright, so
Okay, so which one are you doing?
so I just submitted what we did.
Any list of the things.
Okay, so I said learn, and then it was learn, submit,
both words.
learn space submit.
Time.
Okay.
You should be able to press that blue button.
Is no one else
Actually, I think this is the one you just did.
Right.
Oh, that's right, you've already gone through redundancies, right?
Alright, so now mark on the
Your first HTML tag?
right.
Okay, so you said that we should work on one computer, but we all need to submit, right?
So yes, eventually. So you can share the code with one another through Slack is probably the easiest way to do that, or through email or something. But if one of you, so the problem is if you're both coding at the same time, then you get distracted and you're not helping each other. So that's the reason to.
Okay.
Yeah. It also, by the way, like this isn't like a graded course, right? So if you don't like submit, it's okay, right? It's just nice to have it so you have an example.
So you go first?
Yeah. Okay.
What'd you say?
For some reason, there's some stuff in here, but we can go into the installation now. Code it up.
Yes, just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you start with those angle brackets, are cool.
I don't know how to refer to those appropriately either. Yeah, less than greater than. Yeah.
So the big crocodile mouth.
There you
Greater than?
Yeah. And then, boom.
Alright, so I have my open and close, and I'm gonna type what hello world in here, yeah?
Yep.
In quotes, or,
I don't think it needs to be close.
you know, we can see that, right?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to stop it.